In our document, we're going to have three kinds of images. We're going to have full raster images, which is mean that every pixel has its own color. And we can have a lot of pixels that are the same color, but it's just going to be pixels everywhere. We're going to have pixel images, which are converted to vector art. They're smaller, and they have a different look to them. And then we're going to have numbers, which are going to be large text. So here in this picture, we see the number 1. That comes from Illustrator as a vector graphic. And we have this illustration down here, which is an Illustrator file, but it's a raster images that's converted, but it's a raster image that's been converted to vector. That's why we see the steppiness. It has a look to it. Good for certain kinds of books. And then we're going to have a full raster picture, which has got every pixel color that's available. Now let's look at my layout of my files on disk. I'm in my project folder, so my project is called InDesign Setup. So this is my demonstration, this is my project. Your project name will be different, but remember I have my subfolders, AI, Illustrator, ID, InDesign, PDF for outputting my files, PS for Photoshop, and then I have a couple of extra folders here. The text file is where my Tale of Two Cities source text is coming from. Now my Illustrator files, I'm going to go into this folder, open this up, and you can see I already have a bunch of stuff there. And I'm going to open up this InDesign file setup. So this is an Illustrator file. Open up Illustrator. And I'm just using numbers because they're a great example. So I have 10 artboards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I put in text for them. So 1, 2, 3. Now something interesting I did when I set up my text is very important for me, the way that I work in, and very important for your boss later on when you start working about how you organize your files is how you laid out everything. So I have these different artboards, and so I created a layer for each artboard. And inside layer 1, so when I open it up, it has a new layer. So right there, there's layer 12. I don't need that, so I'm going to delete it. And I have a layer for my guides. So when I create my guides, they go into a layer. But I created 10 layers for the 10 different pages. And that's going to help me in a couple of ways when I output everything later. And then when I output my work, and just if I have to go back and make changes for something. So now this Illustrator file, I've already set this up, 10 artboards, 10 layers, and inside each layer is a text shape. It's a text file. So I can edit, because it's still text, I can still edit it. Now I'm going to go up and save my file as a new name. So File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Numbers 2 because I'm going to make some changes. I want the current. Okay. Now each one of these, I assigned a style to that. And we have paragraph styles and we have character styles. So if I go down to paragraph styles, if I go to character styles, let me scoot this up a little bit. Character, I have this character style. And now to edit this, it's a little bit different between editing in InDesign and editing in Illustrator. And to edit this, I can pick character styles options. This looks very similar to InDesign. Doesn't have as many options in it because InDesign is much more powerful of a text manipulation tool. But I can change some things. One of them is color. So I'm going to go to color here, and right now it's red, and I can change that to these different process colors. Or I can click on here. So I can change it to these different process colors. And for example, I'm going to change this to blue. And my character format, my basic character formats, I can change the kind of type. So here I'm using Helvetica. I could pick impact. And so we could pick impact. You can see it just looks a lot different. It's really big, strong, doesn't look very much like French. And so if we were to pick Diderot. That's definitely French from the period closer to Charles Dickens. So I'm going to pick that. And we have a regular italic and bold. And I'm going to leave it at regular. Okay. And I have kerning or tracking down here. And that was useful for getting the spacing. And it worked okay for the other font I was working at. But I'm going to pick 0. You can see the difference, the spacing here between the 1 and the 0. Then I'm going to pick a smaller amount. And we'll leave it at that for now. We do have the luxury of being able to nudge things around in InDesign. But I can also increase the size. Now this is pretty large type. So if I pick 600, what will happen? So, okay, it's all larger, maybe too big. For variety's sake, we're going to pick something smaller than what I had before. And so now you notice that that one number changed, and that's something about how I was working. So I want to make sure that when I change that, I am editing the style. So I'm going to go back down here, click on this option up here, pick Edit Character Options. So when I change those things, I want to make sure I change it here. So if I pick 600 to 300, then we get the change reflected there. And we'll do that. And I'm going to leave that spacing at that. So now I have my text lined up, my images. You can see that some of these are getting too close to the border. So I can go in, pick my selection tool, pick an individual layer. Now it's not letting me pick it. And the reason why is that although I could change all the type, because my layer is locked, it doesn't allow me to select it. So here I'm going to open it up and select, and that is layers selected. So now I can have my tool and I can adjust my spacing. And I can pick them all. And because I'm using a smaller type, then I'm going to raise all of them up to fit in that top. Okay. And it's a strange looking typeface, or these numbers are kind of strangely spaced. It fits the tale of the two cities quite well. So for that example, it's consistent, it's good. Or I could change it. Anyway, I'm going to save the file here. So I made these changes. I use the character styles. I can change everything all at once. Bang. InDesign has something similar. We're going to be using that also. So now I'm going to save this file. I'm going to save this as version 3 because I've been monkeying around with it quite a bit. Now what we want to do is export these pictures so that we can read them into InDesign as artwork. So I'm going to go to File, Export, and I'm going to pick Export As. And I don't want to pick PNG, that's raster images. I'm going to pick SVG, which is going to give me vector graphics. I'm going to use the artboards, and I'm going to export all of the artboards. So if I only wanted to export 1 or 2, I could do that. And later on, let's say if we have to go fix one of them, I can just export that individual one. So now I'm going to click Export. And it's asking me for a naming convention, and I'm going to give it this time, let's do this. I'm going to give it a 4 decimal. In feature films, 4 decimals are used quite a bit. So I'm going to do that. It's going to show some variation. And something happened in the background in my folder. So now we can see that if I go into my folder, these new images were exported. Now it didn't give me 4-digit numbering like I thought. So even though I picked 4, it didn't give me anything. But it gave me these pictures. So you can see 1, and so they're numbered. So these are the new guys. Let me just pick those. And I'm going to give them a color. So we're grouped a little bit together. They're blue. So I got the blue. Now, something funny happened is that when I exported, even though my artboards are numbered in this order, the way that it exported was different. I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But when it exported, it goes 1, 4, 7, 9. And so here I have 1, 4, 7, 9. And so I'm going to go in and fix that. So this 9 is I'm going to pick a 3-digit number just so that I know it's different. So 1 is okay, 0, 1, and then down here I'm going to pick, this is 4, 0, 4. 006, and then here we have this last one is 3, 0, 0, 3. So you can see I hit the space bar just to have a quick preview. And the SVG vector graphic format is nice. It's like a little miniature Adobe file without being an Adobe file. It's like a, so 1, 2, 3, go down through those. So now the reason why checking that changing the name was important is that if I wasn't careful up here in how I laid out something and I exported it, I could go through all the trouble of renaming all those artboards or rearranging them, and that might be an option, especially if you're really early in on the project. But if you've really done a lot of work already, you can export and then just check the naming and change the naming here. So those are options for you. Ideally, this would have been laid out horizontally to be correct. That would have been the proper best way. If you're already invested in it and you didn't do that, this is another option. And I like using the padded numbers and the colors. And sometimes when I work, let me go only into this folder. I'm going to make a new subfolder and I'm going to call this Keepers. And this is kind of like for old stuff. And I'm going to put the old files into Keepers. And sometimes I make another folder called Kill. And if I delete something, sometimes I'll move it there first before I'll delete it. I'll maybe make sure it's not being used by something else, and then I'll delete it. Sometimes if I delete things directly, I delete the wrong things. So anyway, I got my master file here, and then I have all my sub-export files. Next, we're going to look at full raster pictures and turning those into vector files using Illustrator.